The moment I saw Patricia Drummond standing beside my food truck with her phone raised like a weapon, recording every inch of my operation, I knew my peaceful Tuesday was about to turn into a nightmare. I had just finished serving lunch to a construction crew working on a house renovation 3 blocks from my own home in Mesa, Arizona. The desert sun beat down mercilessly, but business was good. My truck, Paulo's Baja Fusion, had become something of a local legend over the past 2 years. We specialized in California Mexican fusion with a twist, and our fish tacos could make grown men weep with joy. "Excuse me," Patricia called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the mariachi music playing from my truck speakers. "Are you aware that you're operating a commercial vehicle in a residential zone?" I climbed down from the service window, wiping my hands on my apron. "Madam, I live here. I'm Paulo Zimmerman. I own the house at 4387 Desert View Drive." She looked at me like I had just admitted to committing a felony. Patricia was exactly what you would picture when someone says, HOA president. Mid-50s, blonde highlights that probably cost more than my weekly grocery bill, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and a tablet clutched to her chest like holy scripture. That tablet, I would soon learn, contained every single HOA regulation for our Sunset Ridge community. "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Zimmerman. You're parking this commercial vehicle in your driveway and apparently operating a business from a residential property. That's a direct violation of our HOA covenants, codes, and restrictions." I felt my stomach drop. "Hold on. I've been parking my truck at my house for 2 years now. Nobody ever said anything." "Well, I'm saying something now." She tapped her tablet screen with one perfectly manicured nail. Section 14, Paragraph 8, Subsection C clearly states that no commercial vehicles exceeding 20 feet in length may be parked in any driveway, street, or common area within Sunset Ridge for more than 2 hours. Your vehicle has been there for, she checked her watch, 16 hours based on the timestamp from the security footage I reviewed. Security footage? Are you serious right now? Completely serious. Furthermore, you cannot operate a commercial food service business from a residential property. That's Section 9, Paragraph 3. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Look, Miss Drummond, I'm the HOA president. Miss Drummond, my truck is my livelihood. I park it at my house because that's where I live. I don't operate the business from the property. I drive to different locations around the city. I'm not serving customers from my driveway. The regulations are quite clear. You have 48 hours to remove the vehicle or face daily fines of $100. She turned on her heel and walked back to her white BMW SUV, leaving me standing there in disbelief. The construction workers I had just served were watching the whole scene unfold, and one of them, a guy named Rick who had become a regular, walked over. "Man, that's Patricia Drummond. She's notorious. My buddy lives in Sunset Ridge too, and she made his life hell because his grass was a 1/4 inch too tall." A 1/4 inch. Yeah, she had it professionally measured. Cost him $300 in fines before he bought a new mower. I went home that night and pulled out every document from when I purchased my house 3 years ago. My wife Sarah had handled most of the paperwork while I was still working as a sous chef at a resort in Scottsdale. We had been so excited to finally afford a home in a decent neighborhood. Sunset Ridge was not fancy, but it was safe, clean, and the schools were good, which mattered because we were planning to start a family. Buried in a stack of papers, I found the HOA documents. They were dense, nearly 100 pages of regulations covering everything from fence heights to approved paint colors. Sure enough, there it was in Section 14. Commercial vehicles over 20 feet were prohibited from overnight parking. My truck was 22 feet long. "This is insane," Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. She was still in her scrubs from her shift at Mesa General Hospital. "You've been parking there for 2 years. Why is this suddenly a problem?" "Because Patricia Drummond decided to make it a problem." The next morning, I drove to the municipal parking lot I sometimes use downtown, 20 minutes from my house, and paid for a monthly spot. It was not cheap at $250 per month, but it was better than $100 daily fines. Still, it meant I had to wake up earlier, drive to the lot, and then drive the truck to wherever I was working that day. It added an hour to my daily routine. For a week, I thought the problem was solved. Then I received a certified letter. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and had the Sunset Ridge HOA logo embossed on the return address. Inside was a formal notice of violation, complete with color photographs. Patricia had documented not just my truck, but everything she deemed a violation. My fence had a loose board. My house number was improperly displayed because one of the metal numbers had rotated slightly. Most absurdly, my trash cans were visible from the street because I had left them on the side of my house instead of in the garage. Each violation carried a $50 fine. The total was $450, due within 30 days. I called the number listed on the letterhead and got Patricia's voicemail. "You've reached Patricia Drummond, Sunset Ridge HOA president. Leave a detailed message including your address and parcel number. Miss Drummond, this is Paulo Zimmerman at 4387 Desert View Drive. I received your violation notice and I need to discuss this. Some of these seem excessive. Please call me back." She never did. Instead, 2 days later, I received another letter. This one informed me that my case would be brought before the HOA board at their monthly meeting. I was invited to attend and present my defense, though the letter made it clear this was not really optional. The meeting was held at the community clubhouse, a modest building near the entrance of Sunset Ridge that usually hosted birthday parties and the occasional yoga class. When I arrived on Thursday evening, the parking lot was surprisingly full. Inside, the main room had been set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat, Patricia in the center like a judge. Folding chairs faced them, and at least 30 residents filled the seats. I recognized several faces. Tom Henderson, who lived 2 doors down, gave me a sympathetic nod. The Chans from across the street smiled weakly. Most people looked uncomfortable, like they were attending a funeral rather than a homeowners meeting. Patricia called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. Yes, she actually had a gavel. We went through standard business budget reports, landscaping contracts, plans for pool maintenance. Then she reached my item on the agenda. Case number 23-47. Property address 4387 Desert View Drive. Owner Paulo Zimmerman regarding multiple covenant violations. She looked directly at me. "Mr. Zimmerman, please come forward." I walked to the front, feeling like I was on trial. "I received your letters and I want to address these violations. First, I've moved my truck to off-site parking as requested. The fence board has been repaired. I've fixed the house number and moved the trash cans. I've corrected everything." "That doesn't negate the violations that occurred," Patricia said. "The fines still stand. $450 for minor issues that I fixed immediately seems excessive." A man to Patricia's left, whose nameplate read Gerald Foster, Vice President, cleared his throat. "Mr. Zimmerman, the fines are outlined in our governing documents. Everyone agreed to these terms when they purchased property here. I understand that, but there should be some reasonableness. I've been a good neighbor. I maintain my property. These are tiny issues that were corrected as soon as I was aware of them." Patricia leaned forward. "The issue isn't just the violations, Mr. Zimmerman. It's the pattern. You operated a commercial vehicle from residential property for 2 years in direct violation of our covenants. You've shown a disregard for community standards." "A disregard? I work 70 hours a week running my business. I pay my HOA dues on time. I'm not bothering anyone." "You're bothering me," said a woman from the board table. Her nameplate read Brenda Morrison. "Commercial vehicles lower property values. What if everyone decided to park moving trucks and food trucks in their driveways? This would look like an industrial park. It's not a moving truck. It's a clean, well-maintained food truck that I now park elsewhere anyway." Patricia raised her hand for silence. "The board will deliberate. Please take your seat." I sat down, frustrated and angry. Tom Henderson leaned over and whispered, "She's got it out for you, man. I don't know why, but she does." The board huddled together, whispering among themselves for maybe 3 minutes before Patricia announced their decision. "The violations stand. All fines are due within 30 days. Additionally, Mr. Zimmerman is placed on probationary status. Any future violations will result in doubled fines and potential legal action." The meeting moved on to other business, but I could not focus. $450 for minor cosmetic issues felt like punishment, not reasonable enforcement. As people filed out afterward, several neighbors approached me with their own horror stories. The Chans had been fined for having a decorative garden gnome that was not approved outdoor decor. Tom had been cited for parking his car on the street overnight when his garage was being painted. Everyone had a Patricia story. Over the next month, I paid the fines because I had no choice. An unpaid HOA fine could lead to a lien on my property, and I could not risk losing my house. But the whole situation left a bitter taste in my mouth. I started researching HOA laws in Arizona, and I learned that while HOAs had broad authority, they also had obligations to be reasonable and apply rules consistently. That's when I started paying attention to Patricia's own property. Her house was the largest in Sunset Ridge, a sprawling 5-bedroom place with a 3-car garage on a corner lot. She had an elaborate front yard with desert landscaping, decorative boulders, and expensive outdoor lighting. Everything looked perfect, exactly the image she wanted the whole community to project. Except for one thing. On my way to pick up my truck one morning, I drove past her house and noticed a white Cadillac Escalade parked in her circular driveway. I had seen it before but never thought much about it. This time, I stopped and really looked at it. The vehicle had magnetic signs on both doors. Drummond Luxury Real Estate, Patricia Drummond, broker. It was a commercial vehicle. According to the same Section 14, Paragraph 8 that she had used against me, commercial vehicles were prohibited. The fact that it was an SUV rather than a truck did not matter. The regulations specified any vehicle displaying commercial signage or used primarily for commercial purposes. I pulled out my phone and took several photos. Then I went home and drafted my own letter, using the exact same formal language Patricia had used on me. I cited the specific regulation, included time-stamped photographs, and requested that the board address this violation. I sent it certified mail to ensure there was a paper trail. 2 weeks passed with no response. Then I received a phone call from Gerald Foster, the VP of the board. "Mr. Zimmerman, I received your complaint about Patricia's vehicle. I want to discuss this with you privately before it becomes a formal board matter." "I'm just asking for the same enforcement she applied to me," I said. "I understand your frustration, but Patricia's vehicle is different." It's not as large as your truck, and the regulations don't specify size for commercial signage. They say commercial vehicles are prohibited. Her Escalade has her business name on it. That makes it commercial. Gerald sighed heavily. Look, Patricia has been our HOA president for 8 years. She's done a lot of good for this community. Property values have increased under her leadership. Can't we find some middle ground here? The middle ground is applying the rules equally to everyone. That's all I'm asking. If you push this, it's going to create problems. Patricia isn't someone who backs down easily. Neither am I. The complaint was added to the next board meeting agenda. I made sure to attend, and this time I brought documentation. I had printed copies of the regulations, the photographs, and even a copy of the same format letter Patricia had sent me, just with her address instead of mine. The meeting room was packed again. Word had spread that someone was challenging Patricia, and people wanted to see what would happen. Patricia sat at the board table looking calm, but I could see the tension in her jaw. When my item came up, I presented my case methodically. I showed the photographs, cited the exact regulation, and pointed out that if the rule was enforced against me, it must be enforced against all residents, including board members. Patricia barely let me finish. Mr. Zimmerman, this is clearly a retaliatory complaint. You're upset about your legitimate violations, so you're wasting the board's time with frivolous accusations. It's the same regulation you used against me. How is it frivolous? My vehicle is parked on my private property. It's not operating a business from the residence. Neither was mine. I just parked it there. Gerald tried to mediate. Perhaps we can table this and form a committee to review the commercial vehicle policy comprehensively. No, I said firmly. I want this addressed now the same way my violations were addressed immediately. I want the same process applied to Patricia that was applied to me. The room was silent. Several residents were nodding in agreement. Patricia looked at her fellow board members, and for the first time I saw uncertainty in her face. Brenda Morrison spoke up. To be fair, the regulation is clear. If we're going to enforce it against residents, we have to enforce it against board members too. Patricia's face reddened. This is ridiculous. My vehicle is professional representation. I'm a realtor. That Escalade is essential to my business. And my truck is essential to my business, I countered, but I still had to move it and pay fines. The board deliberated longer this time. When they returned, Gerald looked uncomfortable. The board has determined that Patricia's vehicle does technically violate the commercial vehicle restriction. However, we're going to implement a new policy going forward. Vehicles with only magnetic or removable commercial signage will be allowed, provided the signage is removed when parked overnight in residential areas. It was a compromise, but a hollow one. Patricia would just remove her magnetic signs at night and avoid any fines. Still, it was something. The smug certainty in her expression had cracked, even if just a little. But Patricia Drummond was not someone who forgot a slight. The harassment started subtly. Suddenly, every minor detail about my property was under scrutiny. If my grass was a millimeter taller than the regulation height, I got a notice. When I painted my front door, I got a violation for not using a pre-approved color, even though the color was literally on the approved list. I just had not submitted a request form beforehand. Sarah and I were having dinner one night when I told her I was considering selling the house. We can't let her drive us out of our own home, Sarah said, though I could see the stress in her eyes. She was 6 months pregnant with our first child, and the last thing she needed was this constant battle. I know, but it's affecting everything. I spend more time dealing with HOA complaints than running my business. My business, meanwhile, was actually thriving. Paulo's Baja Fusion had built a strong reputation. We had regular spots at several construction sites, and I had recently added catering to my services. A local tech company had hired me to cater their monthly all-hands meetings. The food was good, the prices were fair, and word of mouth was spreading. One particularly busy Friday, I was catering a company picnic for an accounting firm in Temp when my phone rang. I almost did not answer because I was slammed, but I saw it was a number I did not recognize with a 480 area code. "This is Paulo." "Mr. Zimmerman, this is Denise Carlton. I'm on the social committee for the Sunset Ridge HOA." My stomach tightened. "Okay. We're planning our annual community summer barbecue, and we're looking for a caterer. Your food truck has excellent reviews, and several residents have recommended you. Would you be available on July 19th? I was so surprised I nearly dropped my phone. "You want me to cater the HOA barbecue?" "Yes. We have a budget of $3,000 for food for approximately 200 people. Does that work with your pricing?" I did some quick math. It was doable, and honestly, it was good money. But the irony was almost too much. The same HOA that had fined me and made my life miserable for months now wanted to hire me. "Can I ask, does Patricia Drummond know you're calling me?" There was a pause. "The social committee operates independently from the board. We handle community events." That was not an answer, but it told me what I needed to know. Patricia did not know. "Let me think about it and get back to you." That night, Sarah and I debated it. "It's a lot of money," she pointed out, "and it would be great exposure. Half the neighborhood would taste your food. But working for the HOA that's been harassing me, it feels wrong. Then maybe it's a chance to show them who you really are. Let your food speak for itself." She had a point. I called Denise back the next day and accepted the job. We worked out the details, the menu, the setup, and everything else. She seemed genuinely excited and mentioned several times how much everyone was looking forward to it. 3 weeks before the event, I got another certified letter from Patricia. This one was different. It was a cease and desist notice regarding my business. According to the letter, operating a catering business that served residents within Sunset Ridge violated the community covenants against commercial solicitation. She cited Section 12, which prohibited door-to-door sales and commercial activity within the community. She was claiming that my accepting the catering job constituted running a business within the HOA boundaries. It was absurd. The social committee had approached me, not the other way around. And catering an HOA event was not commercial solicitation. But the letter threatened legal action if I proceeded with the barbecue. I called Denise Carlton immediately. "Did you see the letter Patricia sent me?" "Oh my God, yes. She's gone crazy. The social committee is furious. We hired you in good faith. She has no authority to cancel our contractor. Can she actually stop this?" I've reached out to our HOA attorney. Technically, the social committee has autonomy over event planning within our approved budget. Patricia is overstepping. But she's threatening to make this a huge issue. I sat in my truck parked outside a job site in Gilbert trying to process this. "What do you want me to do?" "Honestly, I want you to cater the event anyway. We have a contract, but I understand if you don't want the headache." I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. "I'll do it. I'm not letting her bully me out of a legitimate job." The next board meeting was explosive. The social committee brought their complaint against Patricia for interfering with their contracted services. Patricia argued that she was protecting the community from a resident who had shown repeated disregard for HOA rules. It became a referendum on Patricia's leadership. And for the first time, I saw genuine opposition to her on the board. Tom Henderson, who had always been supportive, stood up during the resident comment period. Patricia has turned this HOA into a dictatorship. She picks and chooses which rules to enforce and against whom. Paulo Zimmerman is a good neighbor and a talented chef. The fact that Patricia is trying to sabotage a community event because of a personal vendetta is unacceptable. Several other residents applauded. The tide was turning. Brenda Morrison, who had generally sided with Patricia, spoke carefully. I think we need to separate personal conflicts from community business. The social committee followed proper procedures in hiring a caterer. Unless there's a legitimate safety or legal concern, the board shouldn't interfere. Patricia looked around the table and realized she was losing control. Fine. But if there are any issues at this event, any violations, any problems whatsoever, I'll be documenting everything. That sounded like a threat, and everyone knew it. July 19th arrived hot and bright, typical for Phoenix in summer. The community barbecue was scheduled to start at 5 in the evening to avoid the worst of the heat. I arrived at the clubhouse at 2 to set up. The social committee had arranged for tables, chairs, and decorations. My truck was parked in the clubhouse lot, and I had brought my prep team, 2 guys who worked with me regularly named Marcus and David. We set up stations for tacos, quesadillas, fresh salsas, rice, beans, and my signature fish with mango salsa. Everything was fresh, prepared that morning. The smell of grilled meat and spices filled the air as we worked. Residents started arriving around 4:30. Families with kids, older couples, young professionals, everyone mingling and excited for the food. Denise Carlton was running around making sure everything was perfect, and she kept thanking me profusely. Patricia arrived at exactly 5, wearing white linen pants and a turquoise blouse, looking like she was attending a country club function rather than a neighborhood barbecue. She made a show of inspecting everything with a critical eye. She examined my health permits displayed on the truck. She watched my team like a hawk, presumably looking for any violation she could find. When the food service started, the response was overwhelming. People loved it. I heard compliments constantly. Parents told me their kids never ate fish but were devouring the tacos. Older residents raved about the flavors. Several people asked for business cards. I was in the zone, doing what I loved. Cooking for people, seeing their enjoyment, connecting through food. This was why I had left the resort job to start my own business. I wanted this freedom and this direct relationship with the people I served. 2 hours into the event, I noticed Patricia standing near my truck, talking on her phone. She looked agitated, gesturing emphatically. My gut told me something was wrong. 10 minutes later, a Maricopa County health inspector arrived. He was a middle-aged Hispanic man with a clipboard, looking apologetic as he approached my truck. "Are you Paulo Zimmerman?" "Yes, sir. Is there a problem?" "I received a complaint about this catering operation. I need to do an inspection." I felt my face flush with anger, but I stayed calm. "Absolutely. I have all my permits and licenses. Everything is up to code." He spent 20 minutes going through everything. My food temperatures, storage procedures, hand washing stations, waste disposal, all of it. Marcus and David looked nervous, but I knew we ran a tight operation. I had worked in professional kitchens for 15 years before starting this business. I knew the standards. Finally, the inspector handed me a form. "Everything checks out. You're running a clean operation. Sorry for the interruption. Can I ask who filed the complaint?" He glanced toward Patricia, who was watching from a distance. "Anonymous call. But it's not uncommon for competitors or neighbors to make complaints." He lowered his voice slightly. "For what it's worth, this is one of the cleanest mobile operations I've seen in a while. Keep up the good work." After he left, I was fuming. Patricia had called in a health inspection to try to shut down the event. It was vindictive, petty, and had failed. But it had also disrupted the barbecue and caused a scene. Denise came over looking mortified. "Paulo, I'm so sorry. This is unacceptable. It's not your fault." But Patricia has crossed a line. The event continued, and the food was a hit. By the end of the night, I had handed out probably 50 business cards and had 3 more potential catering gigs lined up. People were taking photos and posting them on social media. One woman who was an influencer with a decent following posted a glowing review that got hundreds of likes. As I was packing up, Tom Henderson helped me load some equipment. "You know half the neighborhood is talking about running Patricia out as HOA president, right?" "Really?" "Yeah." Tonight was the last straw for a lot of people. Calling a health inspector on a community event. That's insane. Over the next week, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that a petition was circulating to call a special election for HOA president. Arizona law allowed homeowners to petition for leadership changes under certain circumstances, and there was growing momentum. I stayed out of it publicly. I had my business to run, and Sarah was due in 6 weeks. We were focused on preparing for the baby. But privately, I was glad to see people standing up to Patricia's bullying. Then things got weird. I received a phone call from Gerald Foster. "Paulo, I need to talk to you about something sensitive. Can we meet for coffee?" We met at a Starbucks in Mesa, away from Sunset Ridge. Gerald looked stressed, his usual neat appearance somewhat disheveled. "Patricia is in trouble," he said without preamble. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial trouble. With the HOA." He explained that as part of the petition drive, residents had requested a full audit of HOA finances. Arizona law required HOAs to maintain transparent financial records. When the audit started, discrepancies appeared. Small at first, then larger. Money allocated for landscaping that could not be accounted for. A contract with a property management company that seemed overpriced. Payments to vendors that did not quite add up. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. "Potentially tens of thousands over several years. The auditor is still working through everything, but it looks bad, Paulo. Really bad." "Are you saying Patricia embezzled from the HOA?" "I'm saying there are serious questions that need answers, and Patricia is refusing to cooperate with the audit. She's claiming the auditor doesn't have authority, that the board approved all expenditures, but the documentation is incomplete." I leaned back in my chair, processing this. "Why are you telling me?" "Because you're going to hear about it anyway, and because I want you to know that some of us on the board didn't know anything about this. I've been VP for 3 years, and I thought everything was legitimate. Patricia handled most of the financial details." The next board meeting was standing room only. The auditor presented preliminary findings. There were approximately $42,000 in questionable expenditures over 5 years. Some payments went to a property management company that had the same business address as Patricia's real estate office. Some invoices appeared altered or duplicated. Cash withdrawals from the HOA account could not be reconciled with any legitimate expenses. Patricia tried to defend herself, but she was floundering. She blamed sloppy bookkeeping, claimed all expenses were legitimate, and insisted this was a witch hunt by residents who disagreed with her leadership style. One resident, an accountant named Michael Chen, stood up with a folder of documents. "I've reviewed the materials provided by the auditor. This isn't sloppy bookkeeping. This is systematic diversion of funds. Patricia, you wrote checks to yourself disguised as payments to vendors." "That's a lie." Patricia's composure finally cracked. "I've given 8 years to this community. I've improved property values. I've maintained standards. And this is how you thank me?" "By accusing me of theft." "The numbers don't lie," Michael said calmly. We need to involve law enforcement." The room erupted in shouting, some residents defending Patricia, most calling for her resignation. Gerald tried to restore order with the gavel, but it was chaos. I sat in the back, watching it all unfold. Part of me felt vindicated. Patricia had made my life hell over parking rules while she was allegedly stealing from the HOA. But another part of me just felt sad. This was my community, my neighborhood, and it was tearing itself apart. The board voted to suspend Patricia pending a complete investigation. They also voted to refer the matter to the Mesa Police Department. Patricia stormed out of the meeting, shouting threats about lawsuits and defamation. 2 weeks later, she was arrested. The news covered it because HOA embezzlement cases had become increasingly common in Arizona. The story made the local evening broadcast. Mesa woman arrested for alleged theft from homeowners association. They showed Patricia in handcuffs being led from her house. The final audit determined she had stolen nearly $58,000 over 6 years through various schemes. She had inflated invoices from contractors and pocketed the difference. She had created fake vendor accounts. She had paid herself consulting fees for services never rendered. It was systematic fraud, and she had gotten away with it for years because HOA boards often operated with minimal oversight. I watched the news with Sarah, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. "That's insane," she said. "All that time she was harassing you about parking and fence boards. She was stealing from everyone." "Karma," I said simply. The criminal case moved forward slowly, as these things do. Patricia was charged with multiple counts of theft, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Her real estate license was suspended. Her house went up for sale. The mighty Patricia Drummond, who had ruled Sunset Ridge like a petty tyrant, had fallen spectacularly. Meanwhile, the HOA needed to move forward. An emergency election was held for a new president. Tom Henderson was elected, along with a new board that promised transparency and common-sense enforcement of rules. One of their first actions was to revise the commercial vehicle policy to be more reasonable. Vehicles under a certain size could be parked in driveways overnight regardless of commercial use, as long as they were well maintained and not actively operating from the property. My truck was welcome back in my driveway. In September, Sarah gave birth to our daughter, Elena. She was perfect, tiny and loud, and everything we had hoped for. The neighborhood threw us a small shower and people brought food and gifts. It felt like the community was healing, coming together after the Patricia drama. Business continued to grow. The exposure from the HOA barbecue had been fantastic. I was booking catering gigs regularly, and I had hired 2 more people to help with the growing demand. We even got featured in Phoenix Magazine's Best Food Trucks issue. In November, nearly 5 months after the barbecue, I got a call from Denise Carlton again. "Paulo, I know this is a strange request, but would you be willing to cater our holiday party in December? After everything that happened, I understand if you want nothing to do with HOA events ever again." I laughed. "Denise, I'd be happy to. That barbecue was great for business." "Really? Oh, I'm so relieved. So many people have been asking if you'd do it again." The holiday party was even more successful than the barbecue. I created a special menu with holiday-themed fusion dishes, pozole with a California twist, tamales with unexpected fillings like short rib with tomatillo sauce, and churros with various dipping sauces. People raved about it, and I handed out even more business cards. Tom Henderson pulled me aside during the party. "You know, you should think about running for the board." Me? "No way, I don't have time for that. Just think about it. We need people who understand what it's like to run a business, who know the importance of reasonable rules. You'd be good at it." I told him I would consider it, though honestly, I had no interest in HOA politics. I just wanted to cook, serve good food, and live peacefully with my family. Patricia's criminal case went to trial in early February. I was not directly involved, but several neighbors testified about her behavior and the harassment tactics she had used. The prosecution painted a picture of someone who saw the HOA as her personal fiefdom, where she made the rules and used the funds as her private bank account. She was convicted on 4 counts of theft and 2 counts of fraud. In March, she was sentenced to 3 years in state prison and ordered to pay full restitution of $58,000 plus interest and legal fees. Her attorney argued for probation, but the judge was not sympathetic. "You held a position of trust," the judge said during sentencing. "These homeowners relied on you to manage their collective funds responsibly. Instead, you systematically stole from them while using your authority to harass and intimidate anyone who questioned you. This court cannot overlook such a profound breach of trust." I read about the sentencing online. I felt no joy in it, but I felt closure. Patricia had made my life difficult, but she had done far worse to others and to the community as a whole. Justice had been served, life settled into a new normal. Elena was growing fast, hitting milestones that filled Sarah and me with joy and terror in equal measure. The business was strong enough that I was able to hire a manager to help with operations, giving me more time at home. We were even talking about opening a brick-and-mortar restaurant eventually, though that was still a dream for the future. The HOA under Tom's leadership was completely different. Rules were enforced fairly and reasonably. Communication was clear. Finances were transparent, with monthly reports posted online for any homeowner to review. It felt like an actual community again, rather than a dictatorship. In May, I was working a lunch shift at a tech company in Chandler when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something told me to pick up. "Is this Paulo Zimmerman?" A woman's voice, uncertain. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Jennifer. I'm Patricia Drummond's daughter. I nearly dropped my spatula." "Okay. I know my mother caused you a lot of trouble." I wanted to apologize for her behavior. I've been going through her affairs, helping sell the house and settle everything. I found notebooks where she documented her campaigns against various neighbors, including you. It was obsessive and cruel, and I'm sorry. I did not know what to say. Thank you for calling. You don't have to apologize for your mother's actions." "I know, but I wanted you to know that not everyone in my family thinks what she did was okay. She had problems, control issues, and she let power go to her head. I'm embarrassed by what she did." "I appreciate you reaching out. That takes guts." We talked for a few more minutes. She told me Patricia was serving her sentence at Perryville, the women's prison in Goodyear. She had refused all visitors, too proud to let her family see her in prison. Jennifer was trying to piece together her mother's finances to pay the restitution, selling the house and liquidating assets. After we hung up, I felt an odd sense of peace. The anger I had carried for months had faded. Patricia was a cautionary tale about what happens when someone gets a little authority and lets it corrupt them completely. She had destroyed her own life over petty tyranny and greed. That summer, the Sunset Ridge HOA held its annual barbecue again, and of course, I catered it. This time, there were no health inspectors, no drama, just good food and neighbors enjoying each other's company. Tom gave a speech thanking everyone for their patience during the transition and acknowledging how far the community had come. "We learned some hard lessons," he said, "about the importance of oversight, accountability, and treating each other with respect. We're not perfect, but we're better than we were, and we're going to keep getting better." People applauded and someone started a chant. Paulo, Paulo, Paulo. I laughed and waved from behind my serving station, feeling genuinely happy. This was what community was supposed to feel like. As the evening wound down and I was packing up, an older woman named Margaret who lived in the neighborhood approached me. She was probably in her 70s, a retired teacher who had lived in Sunset Ridge since the development was built. "You know, young man, you did something important," she said. "I just made tacos, Margaret. No, you stood up to a bully. A lot of people were afraid of Patricia. She had power and she abused it. But you didn't back down. You showed everyone that holding leaders accountable matters. That's bigger than tacos." I hugged her, feeling a lump in my throat. "Thank you. That means a lot." Driving home that night, my truck smelling of spices and grilled meat, I reflected on the past year and a half. It had been a roller coaster. From the first confrontation with Patricia to her arrest to building my business despite the obstacles, it had tested me in ways I had not expected. But I had learned things too. I learned that standing up for yourself matters, even when it is hard. I learned that communities can be resilient when good people get involved. I learned that success is the best revenge, and that karma, while slow, has excellent aim. Most importantly, I learned that my food could bring people together. Whether it was construction workers on a lunch break or neighbors at a barbecue or corporate employees at a catering event, food created connection. It broke down barriers and made people happy. That was worth fighting for. Sarah was feeding Alina when I got home. Our daughter was 8 months old now, trying solid foods and making adorable messes. I kissed them both and collapsed on the couch. "How was it?" Sarah asked. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Good, because Denise called. She wants to book you for next month's pool party too." I laughed. "Of course she does." 6 months later, I opened my first restaurant. It was a small place in downtown Mesa, nothing fancy, but it was mine. We called it Paulo's Kitchen, and the menu was an expanded version of what I had been serving from the truck. The truck was still operating, now managed by Marcus, while I focused on the restaurant. The opening night was packed. Neighbors from Sunset Ridge came out to support me. Tom Henderson gave a toast. Even the local councilman showed up, having heard the story of the HOA drama and my business rising from it. The food critic from the Arizona Republic wrote a glowing review, calling the restaurant a triumph of flavor and perseverance. I thought about Patricia sometimes, sitting in prison, her life destroyed by her own greed and pettiness. Part of me wondered if she had any regrets or if she still believed she had done nothing wrong. I would never know, and honestly, it did not matter anymore. What mattered was the full restaurant, the happy customers, my family healthy and thriving, and the knowledge that I had built something real through hard work and integrity. Patricia had tried to tear me down with her petty rules and power trips. Instead, she had pushed me to fight harder, to prove myself, and ultimately to succeed beyond what I had imagined. The HOA had banned my food truck, then begged me to cater their events. Patricia had fined me for parking violations while stealing tens of thousands of dollars. The irony was almost poetic. But in the end, justice prevailed, the community healed, and my business flourished on busy nights at the restaurant. When the kitchen was hot and the orders were flying, I would sometimes step outside for a breath of fresh air. I would look at the line of people waiting for tables, the lit sign with my name, and the truck parked nearby, now a mobile extension of the restaurant. I had built this despite the obstacles, because of them even. And I would smile, thinking about how far I had come from that day when Patricia Drummond stood beside my truck with her phone raised like a weapon. She had meant to destroy me. Instead, she had forged me into something stronger. The food truck that the HOA tried to ban had become a community favorite. The man Patricia had harassed was now a successful restaurant owner. And Patricia herself was serving time for the crimes she committed while pretending to protect community standards. Sometimes karma takes a while, but when it arrives, it brings the perfect recipe for justice.